Hello and welcome to this week's Confirmation to Go for the 6th and 7th grade confirmation class. This week we look at, for memory work, the 5th and 6th commandment. We also continued our discussion of the 6th commandment in class, which is always going to kind of be the thorniest one for us to talk about. But first, let's look at the memory work. The 5th commandment, you shall not murder. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but help and support him in every physical need. The 6th commandment, you shall not commit adultery. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we lead a sexually pure and decent life in what we say and do, and husband and wife love and honor each other. I think the 5th commandment is kind of almost our prototypical commandment. And it's a pretty easy one to memorize because it has a nice balance and rhythm to it, I find. Of course, we start with the traditional, we should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm. There's that couplet, and that's an easy way to hang it, just two H's, hurt or harm, our neighbor in his body, but help and support him, another couplet, help and support. So you have three H's and an S. Sometimes hanging those first letters in your mind can help you carry through if you're struggling with it. With this one, I find that sometimes if you just kind of hit it and find your stride, it's not too difficult. But help and support him in every physical need. And in every physical need is just another way of saying in his body, right? And so Luther's just creatively readdressing what he's just said in a positive way. We should not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but help and support him in every physical need. Put that together, and there you go. The 6th commandment is interesting. You shall not commit adultery. I would take a little bit of time to talk about what adultery is. Adultery is the thing that breaks marriage, right? It's divorce. It's a man going after another woman, things like that. Which is a challenge to talk to the kids about because that's not necessarily what they're dealing with in their lives, right? They're not married and not dealing with those challenges, and Luther recognizes that, and so he gives us this picture. We should fear and love God so that we lead a sexually pure and decent life in what we say and do. Now it's very interesting. There's not a negative charge here. And I think the reason that Luther does that is he knows that there's lots of strange things we could get up to, that this is for children, and that he doesn't want to talk about the bad aspects of our sexuality. He simply wants to talk about the positive aspects of it. And he talks about them in two parts. He talks about them for a person who isn't married, and he talks about them for a person who is married. Or really, the first part is to talk about all people, and then a part that is specifically for married people. I would say is probably more accurate because it's not that our call to lead a sexually pure and decent life stops when we get married, right? Of course not. No. But he recognizes this positive affirmation. So we should, so that we lead a sexually pure and decent life. There's another couplet, sexually pure and decent. This is one of the few places where I prefer the old language, and I would encourage you to talk about this. I certainly talk to the children about this. Sexually pure used to be chaste, and we talked about this thing called chastity. It's an old idea in the church, and it's one that I think we have lost. We tend to talk about abstinence more, and I think that is not what the Bible is teaching. It's teaching chastity, which is to say to value ourselves and our sexuality. So these two parts, lead a sexually pure and decent life, and then another two parts, in what we say and do, right? It's not enough just to do sexually pure things, chaste things, but we need to speak in a way that's wholesome as well. And husband and wife, another couplet, love and honor, another couplet, each other. So again, I think if you focus on the couplets in this, sexually pure and decent life, in what we say and do, husband and wife, love and honor, this hangs together pretty nicely. Well, that's enough for the memory work. So the challenges of talking about the 6th commandment with children that are kind of late elementary school and early middle school age is a great one. I try to always be respectful but also clear in what we're saying, because Part of this I know is that some of your kids have already experienced sexual education and things like that, but some of yours haven't. And that's a challenge in balancing, and they're going to have lots of questions, and I don't feel like it's necessarily my place to provide those answers. I value you as parents and your households and the choices you make, but there is a call here in the Catechism to address those things straight on. And again, I try not to talk about it in a sordid way. I try to talk about it in the same positive way that Luther does. And so I talk to your children about chastity, about valuing their sexuality and what they have, and ways that we can have that. And that's lived out in modesty, but also in a valuing of self. And we talked about how if you value something, you don't leave it there for anyone to make use of. If you have something that is worthwhile and expensive, you protect it, you keep it safe. And I don't think that we have clear and fast rules about how to do that. I think that there are ways that we can overemphasize ourselves with modesty. We talked a little bit about people that insist that you wear skirts down to your ankles, and you can only wear long sleeve shirts and things like that. I think that is probably too far, although not necessarily wrong. I would say it's wrong to impose that on other folks. But I know too, we live in a world where the flaunting of one's sexuality is quite common. And to strike a balance between those two extremes is a part of the task of being a Christian. And I think you as parents appreciate and understand that as well. And I think as if we take this commandment to heart, and I think this is a commandment that's very precious to take to heart as we raise our young men and women up in the fear and admonition of the Lord, finding a place where we don't ask them to treat the God's gift of sexuality as something that is shameful. It's not. It's a wonderful gift, but we also don't treat it as something that is valueless to the point that you just kind of flaunt it all wherever and give it to whoever, which is the great problem of our age. We talked about this too with husbands and wives. From a biblical standpoint, if you come together physically with somebody, that is technically marriage. That is the purpose of marriage, is to bring that together in a way that binds them, not just physically, but also emotionally and legally, so that they take responsibility for each other in that union. And I talked to them a little bit about dating, and some of them said they do date, and but I think they put date in quotes. They even recognize that what they're doing isn't what we traditionally think of as dating. And the only thing I said on that, because I don't make value judgments on those things, again, that's for you as parents to handle. But I think it is important to recognize that as we come together with another person, even emotionally, but certainly physically, right? And not just physically like sex, but physically like holding hands, even kissing, things like that. There are connections being made, and the Bible talks about our physical relationships between man and woman being one flesh. And guess what happens when you come into a one flesh union with somebody? Even just holding hands with them. I think this is true. You may not, but I follow me along on this. That when you emotionally and physically connect yourself with somebody and then kind of tear that apart, you do damage to yourself. Now, you're going to do much less damage to yourself when you're holding hands with somebody and you let go, than if other deeper physicality is happening, of course. But when you come together with somebody and then just kind of tear apart from that, right? Which is so often what modern dating looks like, right? You see a person for a while and it doesn't work out and you go your separate ways. And you come together with another person, it doesn't work out and you go your separate ways. And on you go. I guarantee you're doing great damage, both to your body and especially to your soul, to your emotions and things like that. And God is trying to protect that for us. And we thank God that he loves us enough to do that. And so the great gift that the Bible gives us, that the sixth commandment gives us, is the gift of chastity. and it's protecting us from this sensuality, from this way the world has that both says your sexuality is so important that you need to put it out there, but also that your sexuality is so worthless that you should give it to anybody. I think the world gives very mixed messages on this topic, and I think the church, standing in Scripture, can give a very positive message and say, man, we have this wonderful gift of God that is meant for a very specific purpose. It's meant for marriage. And so let us value it the way God calls us to value it, and treat it as the treasure that it is. Well, as you can see, that is a challenging topic, and I do want to encourage you to talk about this in your homes and have those tough discussions, of course. But as we go forward, I think things get a little bit easier. The following commandments are still great blessings of God being bestowed and great evils that God is protecting us from, but we'll work on running through those in the next couple of weeks. All right. Well, I hope you found this helpful. Continue to go through the worksheets and the question and answers in the catechism. Those will enrich your experience and certainly deepen the faith of your children and your own faith as well. And until next week, God bless you.